Welcome to the Power of X. Stories from the Front Lines, a podcast by Rafter X. Join us as we dive deep into the personal stories of our staff and clients, celebrating the people who make our roofing solutions exceptional. Each episode shines a light on the heart and soul of Rafter X.
Give us kind of a background of you as a person, and a lot of this that I like to go through in these episodes is like who you are as a person and who Andrew is versus COO Andrew, or I like the dad stuff and I like the coach stuff, and that stuff. That's you. But I'm not as interested in business stuff with this, right?
Sure.
So kind of give me 10,000 foot overview on that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a single dad of 4 kids, so they are a lot of my life and a lot of my focus. So do a lot of coaching with football, and basketball is big with the boys. And then I have 2 girls that are daddy's girls and wrapped around my finger, and whatever they need, I kind of take care of. So they're awesome. So their ages are 9, 11, 13, and 15. So right in the fun ages of, figuring out who they are.
2 years. Yeah.
It's well planned.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say.
2 girls, 2 boys. So youngest 2 are girls. So.
Great operational manager there.
Exactly
Exactly
right.
what I had to get done. Yeah.
And that's it, right?
That's it.
Done.
Yep.
So no, but they take up a lot of my free time on weekends and so forth. Outside of that, for me, I like heavy invested in family, love to do like DIY home stuff, do a lot of remodeling work at the house and stuff like that. Outside of that, it's really just dad and taking care of the family and take care of the house and stuff like that. So
yeah, I know you're definitely committed to the company and that you're always available for us. So I know you have a lot of time where you're always ready for us. But so prior to that, prior to having those kids 15 years ago, right, and beyond, where'd you grow up? Like, where are you originally from? Give me some roots.
Yeah, I grew up in northern Illinois, small town, son of a carpenter, retired carpenter. So built a couple houses as a kid with my dad, and really got into like kind of the construction side. Moved out to college, went to college in Chicago area, so spent several years in Chicago and took a little stint, moved to Memphis, Tennessee for a little while, spent about 4 years down there, and ended up now in central Illinois. So,
where in northern Illinois were you?
Rock Falls.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So,
So, I mean, I grew up in Roscoe and Rockton.
Yeah, so not too far.
Yeah. So
Rockford is where we went to eat. So that's
I know.
where all the restaurants were,
Yeah.
like shopping malls and restaurants.
I don't know how this always happens in my life, but I always end up back partnered up and working alongside Bears fans.
Yeah, right.
And it's just like
we're trying to convert you, Matt.
As a kid, it's like God's way of trying to put me there, right?
Yep.
Teaching me something. So where'd you go to school?
Undergrad, I did Judson University. It's in Elgin.
Okay.
So,
and then career-wise, so coming out of there, right? So career-wise, I know you had some time with some pretty big names.
Yeah. So right out of college, I started with Service Master and started at their corporate offices, which they were based in Downers Grove. Started in finance department, kind of worked my way up there. That's what brought me to Memphis. They moved their headquarters to Memphis.
Okay.
And I was running their finance department that worked with the franchise owners. So they did loans and lending for vehicle purchases, acquisitions, line of credits, all different types of financing things that a franchise would need. So really kind of loved the entrepreneurial spirit, really got into like understanding the franchise model. Migrated there to Service Master Restore, which is their disaster restoration brand.
Yeah.
Spent several years there, about 20 years there, in leading the franchise network. So I was director of operations, VP of operations for a while, where I oversaw half the country, all of the franchises. I worked with the insurance companies, brought in new franchises, worked in like policies and procedures and kind of brand standards and all of that type of stuff for Service Master Restore. Then went and spent a couple years at their Terminex brand, which is not a franchise model, but it's a branch-based business. Spent some time there, and then did a short stint at USIC, which does underground utility locating. So I ran the north east for them, so pretty much a quarter of the country. on the operations side. But then got calling back to Service Master, which was kind of fun. So migrated back to taking over as CEO of the largest Service Master franchise
Oh, wow.
in the country. So they had they were in 9 states, about 26 locations, but based in Chicago. And so it's business I knew well from my former days, and they were going through a transition and they needed some help, and came in for about a 2-year stint to help kind of turn their company around and migrate and navigate them through some difficult challenges that they had and some changes, and then ended up here. So
Yeah. Well, we're lucky to have you. That's for sure. The so with the Service Master stuff, did you do a lot of like storm operations and deployment and that type of stuff?
Yeah. So, more recently with the DSI, Service Master DSI, we were really heavy in storm chasing. We had a whole SRM arm, which is the commercial side. So really big, more on the commercial side of storm chasing.
Okay.
So a lot of time in Florida, a lot of time in New Orleans, Texas. When the hurricanes came through, we would come in. So, it was deploying of a sales team to actually hit the ground and go sell, followed by an operations team with the equipment and everything else to get the projects done.
Tell me about from your side, right? Because I've worked a lot with guys like that, right? That as far as on the restoration side for the commercial building envelope and cover up and that we do, or that I used to do, I should say. The how did you guys? How were you tied into those contracts? Did you go down there from Chicago? You all didn't just go down there with your semi trucks and trailers and go knocking on doors.
Oh, no,
you guys were tied into what, TPAs and things like that, or what?
So really a lot of our things were pre-relationships, right? So we did a whole lot of selling before storms, right? So we knew the areas that were likely to get hit at some point, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of property management companies, a lot of we would, kind of get pre-authorization from them as, hey, if something happens to your building, call us, right?
Yeah.
Our benefit, we had a little over 500 employees. We could deploy from, our 27 locations. We could grab a few people from everyone and send them so we could get there quickly with equipment. So they already knew the price. They already knew what we were capable of. They already knew our scale. And so we would, when the storm was coming, we would track it. We would call them all ahead of the storm. We'd tell them, hey, we're here for you. And then we kind of watch for where the eye hit and then send our people in to say, hey, we're here, right? So we're ready to take over and get you back to functioning.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an amazing position to be in. What was your number one headache with that side of it?
Oh, people, for sure, right? So when you're dealing with, when you're dealing with people that say, hey, I'll sign up and go on hurricane duty, right?
Yeah.
You always have knuckleheads that do something, stupid, right? Like whether it's getting in fights, getting arrested, wrecking a car. We had one guy that, thought he could drive through water and floated an F-150 down, into the lake, right? So it's like you always have things like that. Outside of the people element, housing was always a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. So we would actually bring generators and hook up to a hotel and say, hey, if you give us the top 2 floors, we'll provide power for you. You can rent the rest out. Right. So we would, negotiate things like that where we can take over part of a hotel or do things like that. But lodging was always, you've been through that where you're sleeping on cots and with no AC and no power and you're trying to figure it out. Right. So trying to figure out where are we going to house 100 people that are coming to the area. Right. So,
and a lot of times, right, in those situations, what people don't think of, a lot of guys who they want to go chase hurricanes, they want to go for that hurricane money, that big money, right? They get that whale, that big lick. They don't think about, what you said, electricity.
Yep.
They don't think about food.
Fuel, right?
Fuel.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
That's where I was going with it. I learned real quick, my first hurricane chasing, how important it was to have fuel. Mm-hmm. Because you could fill your truck up and then you're driving around all day and we take it for granted, right? Yeah. We take it such for granted, like just being able to stop in and fill up your truck. Well, you couldn't because all the fuel stations were down.
Yeah.
So we used to keep huge fuel cells then thereafter in our trucks, and we'd load them in. I think it was like 250-gallon fuel cells or something like that.
We'd do the same thing. Yeah, we'd drive them down and we'd go as far as we could. When we knew we had gas, then we'd fill up those cells and then take them the rest of the way in, right? So we could provide that. I remember in Louisiana one time we were, everyone was housed in like Baton Rouge and we were driving all the way over to New Orleans, right? And so it's like 2 hours drive like after work, right? And it's like, but that's where you had power. That's where you could get something to eat. That's where you can get a warm shower. So.
Yeah, we did one time it was after Hurricane Ike in Houston. We were having to drive all the way over to I forget the name of the next big city that had a huge casino and everything, but you were 3.5 hours to go find a warm bed, fill up and fill up the fuel cell and fill up the cooler and all that type of stuff, right? Yeah, people just don't think of it. And you know what? You end up seeing that on the sides of the roads.
Yeah.
You end up seeing the fact of like, the trucks pulled over and it's like, oh, they ran out of gas.
Yep.
Like they're everywhere, right? Yeah, it's definitely a learning process. So coming from that, right? Coming from the CEO of that, and then doing what we're trying to do here and planning to do here, what's your goal, do you think, as far as like, why did you take the position for Rafter and the CEO of Rafter? I should probably introduce that as Chief Operations Officer of Rafter.
Yeah, no, to me it's exciting. One, what we're doing, right? So it's I would say a fragmented industry that has a lot of players out there, but no big player that's really got it pulled together, right? So being able to take experiences from working in large companies that have done that, right? In the franchise model, it's somewhat similar of what we're doing here, right? You're taking a bunch of independents and you're trying to roll them into some unified idea of what it is to represent Rafter, or the company, right? So that to me is really exciting. I like the entrepreneurs that we deal with. I like the spirit of the entrepreneur. So having that still like really live in our business, but then adding some structure and unity behind it is something that I think is really exciting. And then you look at, on top of that, the additional avenues that we could take, which is like relationships with insurance companies and, different ways that to think about, hey, how can we actually win in this space? I think there's a lot of things that, some structure and some process improvements and things like that can really say, oh, these guys are amazing at what they do. They are the number one, and we can go after it. And right.
What do you think comparison to what you've done in the past now, kind of, because how long have you been here on the roofing side of things with Rafter? Like, how long have you been doing this?
Yeah, just about a year and 2 weeks.
Okay. So you've been in a year, so you're probably not going to go tout yourself as a roofing expert, but you definitely are an operations and a process expert, and you've been around this long enough to see exactly our challenges, our pitfalls, and I don't necessarily mean at the Southeast or any of the brands, but I mean like as an industry as a whole. What do you think is different from what this industry operates as in comparison to like the Service Master and all that?
Well, one, I think the process itself, right, is a whole lot simpler. You're ripping off a roof, putting it back on. It's a 2-day job, right? Unless you get a big project, it could go on for a little bit longer. But it's a really in and out process, right? So in restoration, you're there for weeks, you're there for months. Like even on a home, you may be there for 3 weeks, right? And then homeowners, as long as the roof looks good, right? Like they're fine, right? They're happy, right? Like it's a little different when you're dealing with drywall and color and like of the paint and did the trim look right? So like here, it's a faster process, right? And then also I think on the insurance side, from that, which mostly we deal with insurance, dealt with insurance there. It's not that complex, right? There's not multi-layers, where before in restoration, there are so many different line items, there's so many different processes. Here, it's a little more straightforward. So I think the opportunity there is, oh man, if we have a streamlined process and we do it the same, in all of our regions, in all of our areas, we can really have something that is scalable, something that is transferable to a new market, to a new area. We've done it, figured it out, right? We have some great minds in our business that have done it, have known all. So if we can put those minds together and say, yep, tried that, works, doesn't work, and all that stuff, I think then, we actually have a really great opportunity. So.
Yeah. Consistent process across all these brands and regions, right? I think a lot of so I was fortunate enough and have worked in the kind of what you've done on that side with some of the big hurricane stuff. I don't think that, and we did our own mitigation. We had some remediation stuff ourselves, right? To scale, doing, 40, 50 units was okay. We weren't going to do 500 or 600. Like we just didn't have it. I don't think what people really understand to the capacity of what you ran operationally before, that on one project, say it's a big church, right? Say it's a really big church, you might have 400 DHUs running, right? And you might have 75 air scrubbers running, and every one of those had to be checked every 8 hours and had to be audited and had to be uploaded. And then each one of those had to be put in Xactimate every single time, marked, noted, right? So we get awfully proud of ourselves in our detail and our really long Xactimates, but guys like yourself know that those Xactimates get to be 500, 700 pages long, right?
Yeah, we had what we would call a daily progress report that we'd have to do on commercial buildings, right?
Yeah.
And it was daily. You're saying what was done, what was doing,
That's
who
right.
was on site, any problems, anything, right? So you're giving a report every single day, accounting for everything, right? You're accounting for all your people. You're checking them in and out. Like we would have an RV on site a lot of times.
Yeah.
That was our command center, right?
Yep.
And so we would have thick binders for the thing of each building and what's going on, color coded and highlighted for where the water mapping looked like and all that stuff. So yeah, very
and
complex.
as they dry out, like how those levels are reading and probing them every time, right? What I'm trying to get at, right, is what I want our guys to know and our company to know is the level and the extent of the detailed operations that you've run, right? And how fortunate like we are to have somebody like yourself here, because I've worked alongside folks like you, right? And I've seen it, and I've been next to those command centers and working on the envelope stuff. And I also, and why I asked what your number one challenge was, is you nailed it, that I thought you were going to say, is a lot of the help that you're using in these emergency situations, right? We can't always travel with, you can't travel with 500 employees to go necessarily go to a storm location. So a lot of it is hired help in the area. Probably a lot of temp help, right? And so you're having to kind of herd cats a lot of times with those people and those things.
Yeah, for sure. We were in Naples a couple years ago, and the temps show up, and we have the shirts, and I'm looking around. The guys are in shorts and flip flops, and it's like, no, we're like, we're Florida work, right? And it's like, no, like we're ripping stuff out here. Like, you got to go get your boots on, right? Like, this is not acceptable. So setting that standard, right? Because you're still a brand, you still have a standard to uphold, even if it's with contracted help or temp help that you pulled off the street, right? And a lot of these people, they're out of work because their place of business got destroyed, right? So they're looking, hey, I need to make some money, right? So they're coming in and, I'll do it. Well, do you really know what you signed up for, right? And no, this is our quality and this is our standard, and you can't do that, you can't do this. So that's a challenge on its own. Your labor force one day can be 80 people, and the next day 30 people show up, and you still got to perform. So that's I did always enjoy like that side of it, like working with you guys on stuff like that. But so moving forward with us as a brand, us as a company as we grow, what do you project in the next year? We don't need revenue stuff, right? But as far as like, what does our growth look like to you as a whole? Like as a whole, how does that look? How does that picture look for the next year? Well, I think the growth comes in probably 3 different phases, right? So you have growth through acquisition, which will be a big part of what we do. We'll continue to acquire, the right businesses and the right markets that really kind of fit, what we do and who we want to be. The other phase of that is greenfield, right? Spaces that we want to move into to say, hey, we know the market's good. There may or may not be a strong player there, but we have the right resources to win in that market. And then the third component of that is just getting better at our sales processes locally, better at our lead generation, better at, brand recognition in our local markets and growing those local markets. So, when we look at that, I think our growth scale is tremendous over the next, couple of years. And I think people are going to see that, and people are going to start recognizing the Rafter name and, the individual brand names in their marketplaces more as we, really double down in growth mode. So,
I think something that like, I think what a lot of people, because I get asked like, what's the benefit of like, being a $15 million a year roofing company and then joining a platform, and for a lot of those owners, right, there's a benefit of taking some chips off the table, right, and making some good money, or taking some of that money now and be part of it. But I think like being in it now, since I've joined the team, seeing and working with like our other brands, with the Mills guys, with the Blue Hammer guys, and the Southeast stuff, right, and some people in the future we're going to be working with,
absolutely.
Right? We're going to just say some of those names, but I think when you combine the talent and like you were saying of guys at like Blue Hammer and guys at Mills and the Southeast here, right, and you pick the top, practices at each one, and you combine it, that in itself brings you up like a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And what I've seen so far from my standpoint is we have so much talent that has just never been taught or learned, other disciplines in this industry, that it's not even changing what they do. It's just adding like another, tool to their tool belt,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So that's kind of something I'm interested in doing. I know that everybody likes the acquisitions are sexy, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Like they're sexy. You get a new logo
Tells
on there.
a good story,
yeah,
right?
right.
Yep.
And the revenue bumps up a little bit, whatever. But I think that the organic growth that we can build in this company and as a whole, as a platform, what I originally thought that percentage could be compared to now seeing it and really seeing like our revenue is awesome. Our teams are resilient and they're amazing. But man, there's a few little switches we can turn on and drive some crazy revenue.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I think about too, right? So when you look at like, why would someone want to sell for us, right? Why does someone want to be a sales rep under this? Well, one, I think because of our size and our scale, we can make it the best process out there, right? So we can make it the easiest platform that they can sell for, right? So through whether it's our tools, our software, our development, right, our reach and with vendors and clout because of who we are and our size, right? All of that stuff provides a better experience for the salesperson, which hopefully ultimately provides a better experience for the homeowner and the insurance company, right? So we're hitting all three, and like, I want to sell for them because, hey, I might make more money selling for them, and two, I don't have to do as much administrative work, and three, all of these things add in to be who we are. And then the other side of that, I think where the platform differs than, the mom and pop or the smaller company is now we can start offering better benefits to our employees, right? Our W-2s that are on staff, right? Like we're growing our number. We're 60 some, W-2 employees now. We'll keep growing that, right? So our benefits and what it means to work for us and being kind of an employer of choice, right? All of that stuff helps us to bring better talent to the table, which allows for better processes and everything else, right?
Yeah.
So it keeps building.
Yeah. There's definitely a huge plus in that we're stronger together as a group as a whole. The support that we're putting in place it's really been incredible to see all of the unforeseens for me, right? Like I've been in the industry, a good amount of time, right?
A little bit.
More than most people. I got more wrinkles and gray hair than I did years ago. Probably more than I had like 2 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But what I will say is to be able to work alongside of folks like yourself and Geener and Keith and Chris and the folks at Rafter, to see how decisions are made and planning is done at a strategic level, and being able to be in some of those meetings and see that there's an even bigger picture, right? Is pretty awesome. It's pretty cool to see. And so for that same purpose, if a guy like me of 22, 23 years in this industry can learn something new every day and a new perspective, just think about like what a sales guy who's fresh, like that all translates down into them. It's all benefit to them in the end, right? And then the homeowner, right? Because like you said, that's the end result. So it's refreshing for me is some things can be frustrating as far as trying to I'm trying to reshape a process that was in play, and then three of them kind of together, right? So it's its own challenge in the Southeast here, which has been quite a bit of work, but to see the benefit that it's given our guys, like, and I can see it, and they might not even see it or feel it right now, but I really do see it. Is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and they're gonna see it eventually, right? Like, and there's a lot of things we're working on that's not ready to be rolled out yet, too, right? Like, we'll keep doing that, right? And it's like we'll have to like kind of spoon feed them a little bit here and there.
Hold on,
I know we try to slow you down a little bit back because you're 100 miles an hour. It's like good idea. Hold up, right? Like So.
Well, what I will say too, from what I've done in the past and owning my own companies and consulting, running other companies and that, I prided myself, I think, a lot on, doing a lot myself, right? I like to be hands-on. I'm just like, I'll just rather do it myself. To have a trusted team to be able to say, like, hey, Andrew, like, let's work this process out. Like, we got this invoicing issue. Like, how can we handle this? And literally have people at that level where you can trust him and be like, hey, I know he's got it. Like, if he says he's going to do it, he's going to do it, right? I want our team to know that if your leadership at their level, at the brand level, right,
Yep.
has partnership and leadership that it can trust and to work with, like that's such a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I've run a company of $100 million. Right.
Yep.
And so, but like, I didn't have an Andrew.
Yeah.
I didn't have a Geener or a Keith. Right. It was like, oh, that needed to be paid.
That's me.
Like, oh,
right.
Yep, that was supposed
Who
to
dropped
be
the ball? Me.
Yeah,
right?
that was me. Yeah. Yeah. So it really is a great thing. And so that's, I know there's been some things circulate and kind of always does of just as an idea of a whole of like, oh, private equity and this, that. I couldn't have had a better experience so far, with it all. So
I think that's a big thing too. Like our backer is really supportive of what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
They believe in what the company is going to become. And, I've worked in private equity space a lot, and I've had some that are not good backers and some, have different modes. But, our backers are great, right? They're invested in the company. They, absolutely. We go to them, we talk to them, and most of the time it's, let's figure it out, right? So.
Yeah, and I think what the theme I got from them, and originally, when I began kind of talks about, possibly joining this venture, the one thing that well, there was a couple things that really sold me. We'll hold off one thing.
Yeah.
But the main thing was the commitment to family that both Geener and Scott, was who I talked with, Scott Rivard, and those two guys, the commitment to family and to making sure that you're taking time with your family, and that's always first priority. I think that was probably the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
That and the $1 billion revenue thing, like, it was just like, wow, I never thought I'd be saying that, but that's attainable.
Yeah.
Right. So that, and then the family portion, were the two kind of components. What about you when you agreed to, or when you were hired or started pursuing it? What was it for you that was appetizing for you to come here?
Yeah, so the family thing was number one for me too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So kind of like you, I don't live in Atlanta, right? Like,
right.
So coming here was a bit of a challenge, and I have my kids 50% of the time. So I said, I fought hard to get 50-50. I'm not going to give up time with them when I have them. So if you can work around my schedule, absolutely, right? So when they agreed that, absolutely, family comes first, and we can make that travel schedule work, and I was like, okay, that's good. That's step one. And then believing in the mission of what they're actually looking at doing, right? And okay, that is something. And when I came on board, it was just Perimeter and Regal at the time, right? And so it was kind of seeing that's the starting piece, and we're adding in, Blue Hammer came shortly after, and then Humboldt and, Mills and stuff. So but seeing where they wanted to take it and kind of the direction was like, that sounds fun, right? Like that's a challenge, but it sounds fun. So
tell me about that, because I've been on board for a couple months. I think this is actually like the 8th week or something like that. Tell me about, in a year, it's been like a year. What are the changes you've seen, at least so far, or give me kind of I know it's only been a year, but it's been a year, and the whole point of this is to track us as we go through our stages of a company, right, up to the $1 billion, right? What's it been like for the last year?
Yeah, it's been a crazy year, right? Like looking back, and some times it's like, oh man, that's only a year. It feels like 5 years, right? And other times it feels like, it's been 3 months, right?
Old, right? Like,
my beard was black when it started, right? It's gray now. But so in the year, there was a lot of figuring out personas in the business, right? That was a big thing. Processes, what's really going on, right? There's, I think, a natural bent to say, hey, this is how I'd like it. No, tell me what's really going on, right? Like open your kimono, tell us everything, like we'll figure it out, because we want to be better, right? We want to know all the pitfalls. So that's a big part of it. But then, like now, the past 3 months, we're working on rolling out a unified, accounting software, right? That's huge, right? From the level of reporting and understanding. A lot of the businesses operated out of a checkbook, right? So actually getting to financial planning and budgeting and understanding of like cost and job costs and how all that flows through, and like how we can like become better at it. Like that's a big like systematic change of not just like, oh yeah, it looks good, right? Like there's money in the checking account, let's go. rolling out, ADP from an employee standpoint and trying to become a better employer to our employees, right? Like what can we do there? Like we're talking 401k and stuff like that, right? So a lot of things like that bring together, working with, our software companies and our vendors to say, how do we get better service now that we're not just, $100 million, now that we're pushing $300 million, we probably should get better service from you, right? Like what does that look like? So starting to have those conversations and, and it's not just a cost discussion, it's also a service discussion, right? So now that we're probably pushing one of your top customers, what do we get for that, right? Like we should get a little, we should probably get a little bit of something else, right? So now we can do that, right? When we launched Rafter, that created some buzz and attention, and I started getting phone calls from other vendors and saying, hey, we noticed that you guys are actually really big, so maybe we should talk. Yes, we should, right? Like, so things like that, that a lot of people probably don't see, right? Because it's all in the back end, it's all conversations that you have, but it's leading for something better in the future, right?
Yeah, I think, and I, like, as you're stating that, I'm thinking of all the meetings, calls, texts, emails, Zooms, Teams, this, right? Like all the Google Meets, all the stuff we do. I don't know how much of our team really knows how much at the leadership level that we all do together still, right? Like the tribe meetings that we have every week, the every quarter is going and meeting together, the presidents of Blue Hammer, Megan, Neal, and Chris and Zach, and down here with Lance and I, and then all of you guys at Rafter, like to meet all the time, to keep on the same page, to discuss those best practices. It's incredibly valuable, to the overall team, right?
Yeah, and I think the team probably, the team, I'm sure, doesn't even know that we have subcommittees that are working on future things, right?
Right.
With the best brains in the business from the different businesses that we have, right? To say, no, we're going to come to a consolidated viewpoint of what we all know and have experienced and brought to the table to create something better. And like, this is the ideas, right? So we have a ton of stuff floating around and working on, and like I said, it's going to trickle out in time, but there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes on top of everyone's day job of running their companies and keeping everything going and growing and keeping people happy and everything else. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that like all of you guys are putting into, like meeting and lots of meetings, right? Lots of phone calls and all of that, right? So
lots of meetings, yeah. But the one thing I'll say is, I would say in all of the meetings that we have, in the different meetings that we're all in, they all have substance, and there's a legitimate reason to meet, and you know what I mean, deliverable, and like, here's why we're here, and let's take it from there, right? Yeah. Like I haven't really been asked to be in a meeting yet or partake in a discussion or a call that has just been for naught.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fact finding, sometimes it's seeing what's out there, but that's all important stuff, right? That's keeping our eyes out and our ears to the ground for the guys, right? And the reps in our company. But there's not a lot of wasted time.
Yeah.
Not by the leadership groups. Yeah. I mean, I can attest to that. It's like, all right, I got to go on to the next one, right? And it is, but it gets accomplished, and I think that's a testament, to the leadership and after, right?
And I think it's probably something that the team probably is not aware of, and they should understand that it's not Sawmill sitting in New York making the decisions of how we operate the company, right? It's the leaders of the brands that are coming together, having those meetings to talk about, hey, how are we going to shape this and drive this, right? Now, certain things we absolutely have to get Sawmill approval on, right?
Yeah.
They're the biggest investor, right? But outside of that, the day-to-day and how we run and operate, like that's being directed by, it's not even Geener sitting there making a decision. It's the brand leaders coming together with Geener and myself and Chris and Keith to, kind of see what's the best result, what's the best avenue.
Yeah, and from that, right? Like I have the leadership meetings with the groups here, and I know Blue Hammer and Mills and that with them. So those meetings are really crucial for us. I know the sales guys and gals they're run and gun, right? They're high paced. They have their own stresses and they have their own stuff that they're dealing with. Those weekly meetings that we're able to have with those guys, where they partake and they give us their input, and they take the time to fill out the quick little surveys. Like, those are all really important things for us to be able to come back and have our tribe calls and our meetings with you guys. And I've just seen it's been done really, really well.
Yeah,
right?
Good.
It's been done really, really well. We can always improve on certain things, and as we're as we're all kind of learning things and shaping each other, right? Like we're getting those lines of communication open and who kind of does what and all that stuff, and we're all figuring it out, right? But overall, I think the talent as a whole has made up for any type of no SOP for how we're just going to take this and build it yet, right? We're building that as we go.
Yeah, and I think it's our struggle, right? Because by nature, we want to go faster, right? Like we want it done. We want to be there.
We're
like
roofers, man.
All of us, right? Like even us non-roofers, right? That are roofers now, right? Like all of us like have that, like I think it's in our DNA and our pedigree of who we've hired of like, we want it done quick, but we also want it done right? Yeah. So it's like, we better take some time to understand what we're doing first before we actually do it. So we don't mess anything up. So
no, it's been a good couple months for me anyways with it. So going forward, right, as we look into the next year, what's your number one kind of, to the extent you want to share, but your number one goal to accomplish with the company as a whole, as a platform as a whole?
Yeah, so I think there's probably a few different things in there. One is that everyone that's tied to the platform knows who we are, right? What's our identity? What does it mean to be there, right? What's the benefit there? We haven't really socialized that well, right? We're trying to figure that out and get all that stuff. So one is socializing. So, from local brand leaders to salespeople, like that they really understand what is it that they're connected to and where are we going. The other is that we have somewhat unified system, right? It may deviate a little bit by brand and stuff like that, or geography, which is understandable, but that we all buy into a unified, process. So this is what it is. This is what we're selling. We're going to stand behind quality. We're not going to cut corners, right? Like certain things that we're going to do, right? And then, kind of the back end is, how are we supporting our sales team out there, right? Like what does that look like? And making sure that we have the right support for them to make it easy for them so that, whether it's, scheduling of builds or ordering material or helping them understand pricing, whatever that looks like, that we're there to really drive a world-class team, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where I think like we're getting there, and like each brand has the elements of it, and like putting that together and being like, okay, this is how we do it, right? We're a streamlined, it's a smooth flow. If someone wanted to, move from, Atlanta to Dallas, it's an easy, like, yep, boom, you're in, you know what you're selling, you know what you're doing, easy move, right? So maybe to you, I should have said the other way, move from Dallas to Atlanta, right? Like that to your team,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I kind of I like it too. If you go into a Home Depot in any part of the country, there's only two models really.
Yeah.
It's just which side the plywood's on.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, and then the store flips. Yep. But you should know, like, if you were to go, not that we're trying to make this type of model necessarily, but if you were to go sell a job at Blue Hammer, or go sell a job at Mills, or go sell a job down here in the Southeast, that job flow, that familiarity should be really close. Yep. Right. It might not be exactly the same. There's some nuances at each.
Yep.
Right. But that's kind of what we're getting to eventually.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that trickles through, right? It's like the homeowner, if they have a summer home or winter home in Florida and other home, and they have us do both, it should be a similar experience for them, right?
Yeah.
The insurance company that's working with us, they should see our name and be like, yep, I like those guys. I trust those guys. They know what they're doing. Easy, right? Like that's where we want to get to, is like, we have the reputation to say we're number one, we're honest, ethical, fast, reliable, quality, all that good stuff, right? And yep, we want to work with you, right?
And that exact, right? So that exact testament of what you're saying right there is at the end result, right? Or at the root level for our sales guys or new sales guys coming in, is why they will be able to excel and sell more jobs and do better here when we've built this brand to where when they show up, there is a respect level by the carriers, right? Yep. And by the clients. That's been proven by what we've built here. You have a leg up, right? And that's what we're providing here. I think that, I can tell our team without a doubt, right? And team as a whole platform, that the things that are being worked on and planned on and strategized with the powers that be bigger than us, right? As far as that goes, right? And all the different arenas that touch our industry here are really, really being done for the benefit of our sales rep level and team level and crews and everybody else, right? I've not once sat in a meeting with anybody at the rafter level and heard a me statement.
Yeah.
It's always been, how can we better the team? How can we make the process more efficient? How can we make more money?
Right?
How can we do and I'll be honest with you, if I if I'd have come into the mix and heard otherwise, right? If I'd have gotten that that's because I know they're the lifeblood, right? It's production drives sales flip and drive production. It's the way it goes. If I'd have heard anything to the contrary, I'd have been back to sunny Florida all the time.
Right. Absolutely, right. And I think the same thing, right? Like we could have had a private equity that came in and said, "Oh, we can cut commissions and do all this stuff and get more." No, that's not what it's about, right? Like we can win through growth, right? And
that's right.
We can figure that out, and getting, we'll add more salespeople to it. We'll, help better the ones that are here and get them the training they need and the support they need and everything else to really drive that growth there. And then you add in all the stuff Chris is doing on the back end, right? When a salesperson goes and they show a website that's connected all across the United States, like, oh, there's some validity there, right? You're not a fly-by-night company. You're not just going to take my money and run. No, you're actually a legit company, So
yeah, especially in an industry, right, that is, let's face it, roofers and car salesmen are often talked alike, know, and it's not in a good conversation. Even though we all need to buy cars and we all need to buy roofs, right? So building that brand recognition and the confidence, building that confidence, with some of the things that we're doing here. It's huge. It's really a big thing.
You know the story, but not too long ago, I had a conversation with a large customer that owed us a lot of money, and they were concerned that we were a nobody, right? And it took a little bit of time and convincing, and showed them everything, and oh no, you guys are very large. I feel better about paying you this large chunk of money, right? Okay, I'll pay you, right? So there's some confidence behind that for the consumer. So
where do you see us being revenue wise in 2 years, 5 years, 7 years?
Yeah. Well, I think our trajectory is great, right? So I think, in 2 years, I would like to see us north of the 400 mark, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's a pretty attainable target to hit to.
100%.
And then from there, a few factors are going to play into that, right? The acquisition is going to be a big part of that, of what the acquisition landscape looks like. But I fully think in 5 years, we're looking north of 6, right? So I think that's a 600 million. I think that's a very attainable target to hit to.
Yeah.
And that puts us well on the road to $1 billion, right? So, like I said, there's a lot of factors that go into that, and kind of more of a strategy of what our investors want to do as well, right? It's not just hey, cool, let's get there, right? There's people that got to buy into that, but I see the white space that we have and how our geography is filling in, it's filling in quite nicely, right? And we got some strategic areas that we're looking at and to fill in more. That's going to really make us a powerhouse in, kind of the central and eastern part of the U.S. So
and I think part of something that you really like to do, seemingly, and I do, right, with processes is as we build that efficient, fluid process that this thing just runs like a machine, right? Not only can we scale so much bigger and faster, but we can do it with less stress and make more money, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think you'll see the speed of our growth really increase once we get the foundations figured out, right? So we're still in the foundation building and structure building. Once that's done, acquisition, we have a plan for you. Here's the model. Here's the, here's how you integrate into our system. Greenfield, here's how we do it. We've done it. We know it. We can move people there and have it up and running in no time, right? Once we get to that level, then it's just a matter of picking on a map where we're going next, right?
Yeah.
So,
if we know we can make an acquisition, we can take that acquisition revenue and triple it with our growth plan or quadruple it. That's where you're talking about just it's just going to domino up so
for
fast.
Sure.
So I'm excited about that.
And for us though, the acquisition, it's not just find white space and go there, right? It's finding the right business, finding a business that has the, kind of integrity and code that we operate to, finding it that has the structure that works with us, right? So like we don't want to buy dogs, right? Like we want to actually find the people that are, really good in the marketplace, have a good brand that can benefit from a better system or a better process or better technology, whatever it is, and drive that. So
yeah, I think that's huge. That's huge. I think there's my email box still from other companies full of like, hey, do you want to sell your company? I'm sure every other roofer in the country gets the same thing. To that extent of you saying, and I'll kind of step out of the Rafter perimeter thing, but from having my own company prior, right? What I can also tell you now from both sides is how important it is for, if a brand is going to join a private equity platform, to have it be the right one.
Yep.
I have a tremendous amount of friends and partners that have been in this industry and have gone down this route. Not all of them have been so fortunate.
Yeah.
And so I think that's absolutely huge. I wasn't quick to take the position.
Yeah.
It was a lot to really dig into with Geener and Scott and to really think about because of that, right?
Yep.
Because it could be the complete opposite experience of what we're sitting here talking today, if that platform wasn't a sawmill, right?
Yep.
And I don't know how many of them can be. I just like to know the quality. I know what I feel trickle down. I know what I've seen with you and Geener and now Keith and Chris and all that. For a company who's out there, or reps that might be part of a company out there that join the wrong platform, I've seen how fortunate we really are to have joined, the platform with Rafter, from the brand side. Because there has been some horror stories, but for our team, which is what this is about, I can assure you, it's like we got the good one.
Yeah.
We got the good one.
I agree. If I didn't believe in it, I wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah,
I could go work wherever, right?
And I've said that to some of our guys, hey, I can just keep driving my truck right back to Florida and not come back, and I can go do roofs.
You'll be doing something else tomorrow,
yep,
right?
It's not a problem.
Yep.
I'm here because I do see the vision and how much more it is a benefit to be part of this and to be I've said, and I had this conversation the other day, I forget who it was with, but I've seen many trends in this industry, in the storm restoration industry, right?
Yep.
Every year it seemed that somebody else is saying oh, this is the thing, this is it, this is the big industry changer. There's been a couple, nothing even close to as big of working with private equity and this kind of merging that's going on and all the roll-ups and that are going on. And so it's really neat to be on this side of it with the private equity folks and to doing this and to help them build it. So.
Yeah, and we hear that from our vendors, right? So I'm on the phone a lot with vendors and they're like, oh man, there's a lot of activity in the space. Let's go. We want to be ahead of it. How do we partner with you? How do we support you, right? So you see that kind of, really happening throughout the industry, and it's catching everybody kind of off guard a little bit. And they're like, oh, we got to adapt how we do things, right? So
yeah. What do you see it doing? Well, can we kind of close on this, right? And none of us know. I have my projections. What do you see the space looking like? You know what it looked like before private equity, kind of, right? Yep. I know what it looked like before. You know what private equity is about, and you're part of this, right? What do you see the industry as a whole, not just not Rafter, but what do you see the industry as a whole looking like in 5-10 years?
Yeah, to me, I don't think it's too much different than the disaster restoration space, right? You end up with your top 2 or 3 providers, right, that are covering majority of the country, have the great relationship with the insurance companies, have a good household name recognition, and then you have your mom and pops that kind of filter in and fill in, and they do okay. But majority of the market share is driven through, the top 2 or 3 companies. And I kind of think that's where roofing's going. You're going to have, your top couple companies that control majority of the market share for the United States, that have developed a plan, have developed a relationship. And you'll still always have those,
Sure.
the couple guys in a truck running around doing roofs,
Sure.
right? There's a spot for that. There's white area that probably just doesn't make sense to go to, or some legislation that doesn't make sense for us to go to in certain states or areas, right?
Yeah.
But that's where I really see it going, and probably faster than not, right? So,
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
Yeah.
I'd agree with you. I've had conversations with sales reps from our company, sales reps from other companies that, I get a lot of messages and calls and stuff. And they've kind of asked that. I've given that very similar response. I think a lot of at the field level, at the rep level, there's like, well, where does that leave me? And my response is, hey man, you'd rather be with it than not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a whole lot harder to fight the gorilla than be with the gorilla, right?
That's it.
Like, yeah.
And at that level of like, hey, if you're here while we're growing, you're going with us as we're going to exponentially, not coming in at later levels. Right. So that's kind of my response to sales reps out there, and
absolutely,
field staff, crews, all that type of stuff. It's all the kind of the same that way. So
I think for them, it just bolsters them even more, right? And gives them more to stand behind and more to be on. And, the ones that are there that are producing, they're good, right? They have it down. They know what they're doing. So absolutely. We want them to stay, and we want them to be happy and keep doing what they're doing. And we're going to help them along the way. So,
yeah, I wouldn't, 5 years from now, I wouldn't want to be a sales rep not with a group like us or our group, honestly. I mean, when you're saying the top three, I feel the same way. And I think that I can foresee it now. I wouldn't want to be competing on a street level with anybody from our company.
Yeah.
If I'm with Bob's Roofing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. What do people do, right? They go online. What do they see?
Us.
Oh man, yeah. Who's there, right?
Yeah. So, well, that's great. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate the time.
Yeah.
And hopefully everybody, all of our guys and gals around the companies get to know you a little better. I've been fortunate enough to get to know you pretty good in the last couple of months and work with you closely. So I appreciate you.
Certainly appreciate your leadership and direction we're headed, man.
Yeah.
Good skies ahead. So
yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching the stories from the people who make our platform go. To learn more about who we are and ways to partner with our platform, visit rafterxroofing.com.